Exactly. Oh my God. Okay, so I have a printed copy that I'm going to be looking at. That's why I'm looking down. I also have a Tanakh, which I highly recommend. You always need a Tanakh when you're coming this year, but you're probably going to use it tonight. We're going to look around at a couple of places. And who can be in charge of putting it in the chat in a few minutes in case somebody comes late?
I'll take care of that.
That's fantastic. Okay. All right. This week's Parsha. I should introduce myself. My name is Tammy Jacobowitz. I love Camp Stone. I'm so sad I'm not there. So sad I'm in my basement. It's just not right. Just not right. I want to be in the Beit Midrash. I want to be hot and cold and thirsty and tired and happy with all of you. One of my favorite parts of teaching at Camp Stone was teaching at night when everyone's like bleary-eyed, but then also about to be up for another 6 hours. So we're just going to have to pretend that all those things are happening. And we're sitting in that like U of chairs in the Beit Midrash, and probably people are drinking hot cocoa. And we're using our imagination. So I teach at SAR, and now I really just teach from my basement to whomever wants to learn with me. And I'm really happy you guys are joining me tonight. And we're going to learn about the Parsha. And this week's Parsha, we're finally catching up with Israel. It's a double whammy this week for America. And instead of trying to tackle everything, I'm trying to tackle one small piece of Parshat Chukat, which sounds modest, but it's actually one of the most difficult pieces to tackle. And that is the question of what goes on when Moshe hits the rock instead of speaking to the rock. What does he do wrong? Why does he get the punishment that he gets? How do we walk away from the story feeling less mad than we have in the past? It just feels so unjust and unfair. And I want to offer two possible approaches to give us perhaps a new insight into the story. Okay, so that's the goal of tonight. Talk about this story. It's only a few psukim long. It's what you have on your sheet. So if you don't have your Tanakh, this is the main part, just psukim aleph until pasuk gimel. We're going to look at two different midrashim, which will anchor us in these two very different approaches. And you're going to get a lot of homework from this year. So if you want to have a chavruta over Shabbos and look back at some of the stops along the way and look at them with more depth, take some notes so you remember where these different stops are. Okay, let's start with reading the psukim. Does somebody want to read? Okay, Yakira. Read until, if you're looking on the sheet, read until there's a break. So I guess with pasuk vav, through pasuk vav.
Okay. Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol ha'ida midbar tzin b'chodesh harishon vayashev ha'am b'kadesh v'tamat sham Miriam batikaver sham. Velo haya mayim la'ida vayikahalu al Moshe ve'al Aaron. Sorry, it's hard because the gimel is like right next to it. Vayarev ha'am im Moshe vayomru lemor vilu gavanu bigava achinu lifnei Hashem. Vilama havitem et kahal Hashem el hamidbar hazeh lamut sham anachnu uve'ireinu. Vilama he'elitunu mimitzrayim lahavi otanu el hamakom hara hazeh lo. Makom zera v'teina v'gefen v'rimon umayim ayin lishtot. Vayavo Moshe v'Aaron mipnei hakahal el petach ol hamoed vayiplu al pneihem vayaru kvod Hashem Eloheim.
Beautiful. Okay. You've read the story before. Okay. I bolded a whole bunch of random phrases. I could have bolded the whole thing. Every phrase and word feels significant. I bolded ones that, a couple of hours ago felt significant to me. Let me just ask you right now, from hearing Akira read that so beautifully, what did you notice this time about the story? Just raise a question or an observation, something in the story that maybe you've always seen or maybe you only see tonight that's interesting to you, that might help us understand what's really going on here. Call something out. Yeah, Lizzie.
Just the fact that they say that there's no water twice,
the second time seems a little superfluous.
Okay, good. So what's interesting about the 2 times is the first time it's the narrator. V'lo haya mayim la'eda. That's not subjective, that feels objective, right? The second time comes from the people themselves in that series of sequential kvetching, which every time I read it feels more grating, right? Like, Vilu gavanu. If only we had died. That word gavanu showed up in last week's parsha. It was at one of the many times, right, when Bnei Israel were harping on Moshe. Remember, after Korach dies, and then they say, well, you're a killer. If only you're going to kill us all. That shoresh appears. Vilama, then why'd you take us out to this terrible place, this makom hara? Vilama, again. Okay, so in there, the people then say, mayim ayim lishtot. So it sounds different maybe when it's an objective report and when it's coming from them, and why twice? Okay, good. What else do you notice? Tali? You have to unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Something that it sounds like they've regressed to like their earlier states of complaints when they mentioned, why'd you take us out of Mitzrayim? But then it for sure takes a different turn towards the end of Pasuk Hey when they're talking about Eretz Yisrael as if they're like eager to enter, and they're not saying, take us back to Mitzrayim. They did ask why we left, which maybe isn't such a positive, but there's for sure a turn here.
It's so interesting, actually, Tali, because they don't mention Eretz Yisrael at all. They say, why did you take us to this midbar to die? Why did you take us out of Mitzrayim to bring us to this place, still the midbar, which is not a place of Zera, Te'ina, Geffen, Verimon? You're so right. That makes us think of Eretz Yisrael. They're like on the precipice of thinking about Eretz Yisrael, but they're still locked in this landlocked midbar. Right? Why did you take us here? We can't even yet think about that next stage. Lama, lama, lama. Good. Noah, what else?
They say in Pasuk Gimel and Pasuk Daled, it says, Lifnei Hashem and Ka'al Hashem. So like a big part of Bnei Israel's journey out of Egypt is to kind of leave the slave mentality and become like Avdei Hashem. So it's interesting that like even here they're complaining about like physical needs, but they're still keeping in mind like we want to get closer to Hashem. And so I'm not exactly sure why that comes up in this context. Like, why is that highlighted while they're complaining about dying?
Very nice. Very important. Okay. And that's going to show up again in the second part of the story. But Noah almost highlighted some good news tucked into the story. They see themselves as Kahal Hashem, which is like a news flash, right? Which actually, if you think about last week's Parsha with Korach, one of the ways to understand what's going on in Korach, this is actually another shiur, but I'll give you just like two sentences worth. What's going on there is yet another moment in Bnei Israel's efforts to navigate their desire to be close to Hashem and to have access to Kedusha and to keep feeling a sense of like, wait, it's too much, we're going to die if we get too close. Wait, we're not close enough. So you're noticing here also that they are calling themselves Kahal Hashem. They're Lifnei Hashem. They've got that part. Right? They actually see themselves in relationship with Hashem. Okay, good. One last observation. Yeah, Sophia.
This isn't necessarily from the text that we just read, but I guess I just hadn't paid attention to Parsha Korach as much as I usually do. And I feel like after reading about the Magifah last week, I have much more sympathy with them this time around. Like, I think when I think about the usual complaining of water, I think about Shemot and how that was like a little bit uncalled for because they'd just been saved by God. But here, like, they really had just avoided a huge, the people would survive, like a huge plague. And I feel like I understand their concern for safety much more.
Oh my God, so you said so many important things, okay? First of all, yes, yes, and yes. Coming on the heels of Korach, we see this very differently. And like you said, it's like the kids that come back from the chutz, like let them take a shower, right? Like material needs feel necessary. I have to remember to let my kids shower tomorrow. But, right, like give them some water and it feels different after what they've been through. You're also right to link this to the almost identical story that we have in Shemot. I almost put it on the source sheet, but I realized that we would never even get, I don't know what we're going to get to, but you have to compare it to that story. And that story with the rock and the water in Shemot comes right before Melchemet Amalek, which I'm going to remember to say something about later. So yes, 100%. You also said something that I just want to challenge you on, which what's interesting in Bamidbar, especially when you get to these prakim that we've been reading recently, we don't really know when they're happening. Like once we leave the Meraglim, right? The story in Shlach, okay? Who remembers what was the very, very tiny story at the end of Shlach? Like, it's so tiny that it almost had no names in it. It really would have better belonged in Vayikra. It's like that kind of story. Yeah. I totally forgot your name. Indoor World Baby Drive.
Ellie. Yeah, the Mikoshe Shetzim.
That's exactly right. Okay, the Mikoshe Shetzim, there's no markers of when that takes place. It just says when they were in the Midbar. So that comes the time when, like, who knows when that was? Was that like year 15? Was that year 38? Korach, when does Korach happen, right? Most Mefarshim place it kind of late in the game. This story, we'll see through Rashi when it takes place. It's really at the end. So it may not, you're right, Sophia, we have to read it literarily in light of Korach, but chronologically, it might not be the very next thing. Okay, awesome. You know, Atara had her hands up. Is it something else? Go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to build on Noah's point about how the Shorish Kahal sort of appears twice, and it went sort of in a more positive connotation of the Kahal Hashem, but the earlier when it says V'kalu al Moshe v'al Aaron, it's almost threatening, and how that word, plays itself in different times.
Yeah, nice. What are you thinking of? What's another time that we have the Vayikahalu al?
In Korach, no?
In Korach, yes, and even more, like probably, I don't know, the one that I always think of, because like physically, according to the Midrash, there was a threat. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Vayikahel with Chet HaEgel, right? Vayikahalu or Vayikahel, I forget, al Aharon, right? Where the Midrash tells us, right, because they just killed Hur. That they're physically on top of Aharon. And you're totally right to point out that it's just amazing, because that verb shows up so many times. It's sometimes when Moshe is doing the Asifat HaKahal, it's sometimes when the people are positioning themselves as a Kahal in a threatening way, and sometimes when they're seeing themselves as a Kahal in terms of Kedusha. That would make a great Chabura, by the way. Trace that word and see how it shows up in different stories and what it signifies. Okay. So here we have the opening of the story, and you guys said many more interesting things that I noticed when I read them. But for all intents and purposes, as some people mentioned, I think it was Sophia in particular, there's something about the story that's awfully familiar, right? They're thirsty, they complain, they come to Moshe, they say this a lot. Even in last week's Parsha, why'd you take us out of Mitzrayim? They're still saying that. Did you guys catch that, by the way, in Korach? It's what Datan and Aviram say. They say, like, why did you take us out of here? Why did you take us out of there? You know what they call Mitzrayim, Meretz Avad Chalav Udvash, right? And it's that nihilism, that's what I call it. That voice of nihilism of like, why did you do any of this? You have a death wish for us. That's what they accuse Moshe. And Moshe hears the lama, and then he leaves in Pasuk Vav, Vayavo Moshe va'Aaron mipnei hakahal, there's that word again, Atzara, El petach ohel moed. So they leave being in front of everybody, which is really dramatic if you think about it. Like, if you're a parent, let's use that metaphor. Like you guys are at home. I mean, you're older, but okay, still, so what? There are parent-children dynamics right now that are just like intense. If your parent like couldn't deal with how you spoke to them, that they physically left the room or went for a walk around the block, I can't say that I've never done that. Like that feels very hard. Right? Like they're not there now. Their presence has left, and you are there standing wondering when they're going to be back, what they're thinking. Okay, I'm seeing some blank stares. Maybe this has never happened to you. Just imagine, right? And you're just gone. Moshe leaves them. He goes to Ohel Moed, Vayiplu and Aharon, Vayiplu al Pneihem, which we've seen them do before. That's like a desperation. I'm lost here. I don't know what to do. And just then, Vayera Kvod Hashem Aleichem. So they go to seek advice from Hashem. They don't ask anything, because in the next pasuk already Hashem responds. Okay. I'm going to read this. We're going to read a little more quickly so we can get to the approaches. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Kach et hamateh. Now we hear that and we think, oh, that's familiar. But actually, think for a moment, when was the last time you saw Moshe with his mateh? Yeah, exactly. It's been a really, really long time. Last week's Parsha, Aharon, there was that whole episode of the mateh. But Moshe's mateh has been largely put into museum, lemishmeret. When Hashem says kachat hamateh, that's like a a very deliberate choice. Go get that mateh out of the closet. V'hakel et ha'eda, ata v'aron achicha, v'dibartem el hasela le'eineihem, v'natan meimav, v'hotzeta lehem mayim min hasela, v'hishkita et ha'eda ve'et bi'iram. I never noticed that word until this year. It kind of reminded me of the Rivka story. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like those camels, how often we found out about those thirsty camels. Here too, make sure that you feed, you provide water, not just for the Edah, that word that we saw in Pasuk Aleph, but also for their cattle. Rashi quotes on here, this shows you that Shechas HaKadosh Baruch Hu al mamonam shel Yisrael, right? That's for another time. What does that really mean? But just take note of that, right? It's like there are thirsty animals here too. So Lizzie, from what you noticed in the beginning, like they're really thirsty. This is not just what they're complaining about. Like these are kids who went on the chutz and there was no water, right? It's not just that they miss something that they kind of remembered from camp that they never really had. No, they actually are totally thirsty. So he says, make sure to feed them and their animals. Vaikach Moshe tamateh milifnei Hashem. Noah, that's what you noticed before. There it is mirrored. Kasher tzivahu, which by the way is unusual to see the kasher tzivahu in the middle. Usually it's at the end. Vayakhilu Moshe v'Aaron et hakahal el pnei hasela. Vayomer lahem shimuna hamorim. What does hamorim mean? Rebels. Hamin hasela hazeh notzi lachem mayim. Like, how do you read that question? I read it one way, but there are a lot of ways to read that. Hamin hasela hazeh, right? Rhetorical question, statement. Okay, you'll tell me in a minute what you think. Vayare Moshe tiado vayachet hasela b'matehu pa'amayim vayetzu mayim rabim batesh ha'eda. And don't forget, uvi iram. Okay, end of story, right? So to speak. He does what he's told, kasher tzivahu, gathers everybody, okay, speaks in this way, shimuna hamorim, but then provides mayim rabim, and everybody drinks. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe v'el Aharon. Ya'an. What's Ya'an? Since. Ya'an lo hemantem bi lehakdisheni le'enei b'nei Yisrael lachen. What's lachen?
Therefore.
Therefore, okay, it's like a strong word. Since, therefore. This is not one of those stories that we see on Tanakh where we're like, wait 1 second, is a punishment coming? Or is this just like a strong statement? No, because of this, lachen that. Lo taviu et hakahal hazeh el haaretz asher natati lahem. Vehema me meriva asher ravu b'nei Yisrael et Hashem vayikadesh bam. That's not Hashem speaking. That's the narrator's ending. Okay, so what happened, right? What happened? Moshe did what he was told. Okay, not exactly, right? What are all the changes? Stick instead of talking. The actual speech he said. Go ahead. Who was speaking? Tali?
He calls them rebellious.
Calls them rebellious, which wasn't part of the script, right? He wasn't told what to say, but that does feel extremely, I don't want to say superfluous, but right, it's noticeable. We've never heard him speak that way.
Yeah, and it feels like he's talking about their parents, like if he was going to use that word. It seems like he's talking to the wrong generation when he uses the word rebellious.
Interesting. Okay, we'll come back to that. Good.
After Korach.
Go ahead, Yario.
Like after Korach, so like there is that spirit of like rebellion that I think he still wants to quash.
Maybe. Okay.
But the people from Korach are gone. They're not in the picture.
Okay. Yeah, Noah?
That depends on how you date the story.
He hits the rock twice.
Oh.
It's almost like he tried it once and then it didn't work, and he was like, well, I'm not going to learn my lesson. I'm just going to do it again.
Okay, good. Okay, that pa'amayim, we're not really sure how to read it. You offered it a possibility, but it's certainly noticeable. It didn't say anything about twice. Hashem just said, actually speak to it. So we're tempted to read that as maybe like an extra demerit on Moshe's count. Like not only did he hit it, but twice. Wasn't an accident, right? Twice. Why twice? Mayim rabim? Was that necessary? Maybe he just needed mayim. So is that a good thing that he got more, or right? Like not clear. Yeah. What else? I see so many hands. I'm going to go in order of how you fit on my screen. Lizzie, go ahead.
Just to add on to Noah's point, we looked at least I did today in Shiur, looked at the story of Chabruta, Choni HaMa'agal, Ma'agal, not Ma'agal. But really, like it's the story of someone who has the audacity, or just like has this special relationship with Hashem, that he can say like, Hashem, give me water, but like that's not enough. Like I need more water, or that's too much. And it seems like maybe the twice going off of what Noah said is like that kind of bargaining or exchanging a relationship with Hashem.
Interesting. And by the way, Lizzie, just to like maybe deepen or maybe caution, I'm not sure, right? Like notice that Moshe says, Hamin hasela hazen notzi lachem mayim, and actually, right, that's the plural, but who's the plural there? Is it Moshe and Aaron? Is it Moshe, Aaron, and Hashem? Not clear, right? You could almost understand this pasuk as Moshe taking all the power and Moshe and Aaron taking it upon themselves. Can we bring from this sela water? And then we do. Or are they a conduit for Hashem? They don't make that clear in that statement. Yeah, Sophia.
So when I was thinking about Moshe and the term Vayach, and also hearing about like the rock being hit twice, I was almost thinking it's kind of violent, and it reminded me of the same verb tense that's used when Moshe kills the Mitzri all the way back at the beginning of Shemot. So I feel like it could be a little bit like an anger management problem that's being invoked from the beginning. That could be a questionable leadership quality.
Yeah. So anger management, right? That feels like very 21st century, and like we're diagnosing him, and you're totally onto something. And the Rambam agrees with you, right? When the Rambam is addressing the question of mahu achet po, he says that the real flaw was not what he did, but how he spoke. Shimuna hamorim. And when he spoke that way, he let loose this kind of anger, which is not becoming of a leader. And even if you are, and again, to invoke the parent metaphor or the counselor metaphor, maybe not in virtual life, but in real life, like you might be feeling really frustrated and really upset, but you don't speak that way. Like there's just ways you speak when you are in that kind of position. And when you overstep it, right, that's really the flaw. Now, linking it back to Moshe at the very beginning and linking it back, calling that an anger management, I don't know, but it's definitely a violence that seems to come out of him, which is surprising, right? And maybe not totally continuous with the way that we normally experience Moshe or the way that he normally presents himself. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, Ellie.
Yeah, I would just sort of to add on to the comment before about the taking away from God and putting it on Moshe and Aaron. There's a lot of emphasis on Hashem before the incident and a lot of lifnei Hashem and things of that nature. And then when we actually get to the story itself, it's just El Pnei HaSela. And then there's no mention of God at all. And then Hashem says, Yan lo imantem bi lakisheni. It sounds like Hashem said, like, you're ignoring me almost. And it's all, I would add, the Shimunah HaMorim, the people never, at least explicitly, rebelled against God. Their rebellion is against Moshe and Aaron. So again, it's framing that whole issue as a relationship between Moshe and the people and just leaving God out of the picture.
Ah, beautiful. So if I could just restate what you said and see if I understood it, possibly what they do wrong and what Hashem is picking up on and therefore responds in this very strong way is Moshe and Aaron, what you just did is you used your leadership role, or you use the powers that you have because of my relationship with you, but you totally took me out of the picture, right? So Yan lo ha'emantem bi lahaktisheni, Ellie says, right? You did not use that opportunity to be a mirror or a conduit, or later I'm going to use the term like mimetic posture that you can have vis-a-vis Hashem, and instead you took care of the problem, but you didn't take care of the problem in a way that expanded the relationship between Hashem and Bnei Israel. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Noam. Wait, we can't hear you. I see that you're speaking, but I don't hear anything. Try again. So sad. Put it in the chat box. Okay. Okay. So we mentioned the Rambam as a possible explanation. We have Ellie's explanation, which is a second. And then third, we just have to mention Rashi because it's the classic explanation, right? Which we said in the very beginning, which when you say classic, that makes you feel like, okay, I already know it. But the truth is Rashi's explanation needs a lot more thought. It's not the subject of tonight. But Rashi says, right, on a simple level, let's say on the second grade level, oh, here's what his problem was. Hashem said, speak to the rock, and he hit the rock. So the mistake was that he, misunderstood or misinterpreted the command, and a rock being spoken to would have demonstrated the incredible might of Hashem, but a stick coming at a rock diminishes that capacity to see the koach of Hashem, which there's a lot in there, but there's a lot that falls apart when you start to think about, like, really, a rock and a stick bringing water is pretty amazing. Like, that still feels like divine might, right? And also, why does that mean lo hamanten bi? Where's the lack of emunah, right? They come and they speak to the people and they figure out how to solve how are they showing a lack of emunah? Okay. So we're not going to solve this problem. Nobody has solved this problem. This is one of those stories which, right, you really feel when you read it every year, like, wait, what? Moshe, what? Like, yeah, I see all these things, everything you're saying. I see them, I feel them, I understand them. But how does that justify lachen lo taviu et hakahal hazeh? And then, by the way, the parsha just moves on to the next story. Right? It's only in Dvarim when we get to hear how Moshe took this, when he talks about Ve'et Hanan, his tefillah. But in the surface of the text in Bamidbar, it's like, okay, and then we move on. All right, so here's two approaches. You still with me? Two approaches. Okay. Approach number one. We got to look at the first Rashi you have on your sheet in that box. It's blue. Is it blue on your sheet? Okay. I didn't make this very fancy, but I was happy about the blue. At least it jumped out. Okay, Rashi tells us something which somebody else already slipped in. I think it was Tali, but just to put it in a very bolate kind of way. When the pasuk says, "Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol ha'ida midbar tzin," says Rashi, "Kol ha'ida eda hashlema shekvar metu metei midbar ve'elu pershu lachayim." Meaning, when the Torah uses the word eda here at this moment as a preface to this episode, that's because this is now Dor Sheni. All the dying has happened. This is the turning point. This story, which begins with Kol Ha'ida b'midbar tzin v'tamat sham Miriam, right? Everybody has died of that generation. Chutz mi, Miriam, Moshe, v'Aharon, right? Miriam and Aharon both die in this week's parsha. And Moshe finds out that he's going to die in the Midbar in this week's Parsha. So that's thing number one. Refocus our head here. When we talk about and we think about what's going on for Moshe at this moment, he is standing at the turning point at the very end of the time in the Midbar. The people who are in front of him, you guys all said this in different ways, are not the people from the beginning of Shemot, are not the people from the beginning of Bamidbar. They are the newbies, right? They are the ones who should be, who are ready to be, thinking about going into Eretz Yisrael. Miriam dies, and then this happens. Now, this approach makes the following claim through the Midrash. Let's read the Midrash, and then we'll summarize. The Midrash in the bottom, this is in Bamidbar Rabbah. The Midrash says as follows. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe, be'eze panim ata mevakesh likanes la'aretz. I'm not sure how to translate be'eza panim. I spent a lot of time today trying to figure it out, but I think he's saying something like, well, what do you think actually? Be'eza panim ata mevakesh. Great teaching strategy. When you don't know what to say, ask people what they think. Yeah, Tara.
Sounds to me like on what grounds?
On what grounds? Ata mevakesh likanes la'aretz. Beautiful. I think that's a great translation. Yakir, you have another possibility?
Not like a direct translation, but it doesn't feel like sassy to me, but it feels kind of like, it feels like kind of like what you're doing. Like, actually asking because like you don't really know what to say.
Huh. Okay. But I think let's go with the Taurus for a moment because I think it fits better with what the Midrash is going to say. Not so much sassy as really super direct. Okay. On what hold up, Moshe. Be'eza panim atam mevakesh likanes la'aretz. But the response is a little bit softer. So here goes. Mashal lero'eh sheyatza lir'ot tzono shel melech v'nishpeit hatzon. Bikesh haro'eh likanes lapalterin shel melech. So far, so good, right? A mashal, a parable of a shepherd who went out to, what's the verb? Graze, whatever. To be a shepherd with his tzon of the king, and some of his tzon was captured, right? By the way, who does that remind you of? Moshe, right? In the very beginning, SNES story, okay? But so some of the tzon of the king was captured. Bikesh haro'eh, the shepherd wanted to go into the palace of the king. Amar lo hamelech, imat nichnas achshav, ma yomru habriot, shata hishpeita hatzon. Like if you come in right now and you have a banquet with me, what are people going to say when they find out that all of your tzon have run away, have been captured, and you're inside eating with me? What will they say, by the way? What is he worried about that they'll say? What's the concern? What conclusion are people going to draw?
That you could just like disrespect the king's property and get away with it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That you can get away with it and like somehow your relationship with the king will be intact and he doesn't really care?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
What else? Yeah. Ariel, what do you think?
Maybe that the sheep weren't valuable to begin with because you're not so upset about the fact that they're stolen.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it will end up speaking poorly or looking poorly on the tzon themselves, and by default, your relationship with them, that, oh, whatever, no biggie. It's fine. They can be eaten by wolves. I'm okay with it. Let's have some lunch. Okay, good. Yeah, Sophia, what else?
Just to strengthen Ariel's point, we were talking about panim before. I feel like it's also supposed to remind us of like the panim al panim relationship that Moshe and God have that we mentioned just a few prakim before. And so this is like, even though we do have this special connection, me, God, and Moshe, that it doesn't matter that you have to be treated like everyone else.
Oh my God. Okay, you just brought in so many other things. Can we come back to that when we finish this? Beautiful. Okay. Associative thinking that gets you to insights. But we need to, okay, right now let's stick with the mashal. Beautiful. Panim el panim. So he says to him, what will people say? Now, by the way, I italicized that, ma yomru habriot, because I think that's such an interesting turn of phrase, and we're not going to have time to look at them tonight, but pay attention how many times Moshe gets Hashem out of his anger situation by saying, what will the nation say about you? Right? What will they say? Oh, you could take them out, but you killed them in the midbar. You weren't strong enough. This kind of like, it feels so upsetting, like that's how you're going to get somebody back on. People will speak badly about you, right? Is that what really motivates our behavior? I hope not. So I don't think it really means that, but what people will say is a mirror for what value you're really putting out there. So if the concern here is not the king saying to his ro'eh, people will talk, but hey, ro'eh, is that what you really think? Do you want the value of the tzon to be seen as so low, like Ariel said, that you don't even care? You're not going to even you're not going to skip a dinner to go and look for them. Okay, that's the mashal. It ends right there. Afkan, Amar lo hakadosh baruch hu leMoshe. Okay, this is really intense. Just get ready. Shiv chachahu shehotzeta shishim ribo. Right, like your greatest glory, Moshe. I mean, if I had to say what's Moshe's greatest glory, I don't know what I would say. There are a lot of options, right? But in this midrash, he says, your greatest glory is that you took out 600,000 males. U kivartam bamidbar. Now that's not the shevach. That's not the shevach, right? But that's part of the story. You took out those 600,000 plus, and you buried them in the midbar. The burial is the equivalent to the mashal of the nishpei tatzon. Ve'at machnis dor acher? Question mark. Do you want to now bring in another door, leaving behind all of those 600,000 that you took out and watched die and helped to bury? Achshav yomru. Ein ledor hamidbar chelek leolam haba. You see how right Ariel was? Right? What are people going to say? That door that all died, not that they didn't have any value, but they have no place in olam haba. If you leave them, Hashem says to Moshe, that's what you're going to say about them. That's the value that you seem to be imputing to them, or perhaps even in an existential sense, that will be true. They won't make it in. Ella, tehei betzidan v'tavo imahen. Same word, right? Lo taviu et hakahal hazeh. Hashem says, according to the Midrash, no, you're looking in the wrong place. Lo taviu et hakahal hazeh, but you're going to mevi hakahal hahem. Stay with them. Tehei betzidan. That's been your job. Finish it up. Shne'emar, and this pasuk that's quoted from Dvarim is really complicated to explain how it fits here, but I'll just say in case you're curious, this is from the bracha to God who lived on, Eber HaYarden, and the Midrash is reading this pasuk here, Vayar Reishi Lo Kisham Chelkat Mechokek Safun, etc., as a hint to this idea that Moshe, who is the Mechokek, that should be his chelek, right? And God understood that. Moshe needed to stay here on this side of the Yarden. Lachin Ketiv Lo Taviu Et HaKahal Hazeh Ella Sheyatza Imach. Okay, very, very, I think, intense, provocative midrash. But here's the approach. Okay, if you haven't been listening, now listen. Here's the approach. The approach is, and the midrash here says nothing about hate, right? Did you notice that? Nothing about anger, nothing about sticks, nothing about speaking. The focus of the midrash is almost like Higia Hazman. Moshe, this is a turning point. You didn't quite do something wrong, okay? So the midrash would have to answer, what Yan Lo Hemante, what does that mean, okay? But the midrash says, let's focus on the end of the pasuk, and this midrash taken together with the idea that this is the second generation and people are dying out. Higi Hazman for Moshe to separate and for Moshe to actually finish his job up with Dor Rishon. Okay, that's one approach. It has its positives and it has its negatives, right? Because as we said, it glosses over the Yan Lo Hamantem. It still feels unfair, even if it feels right, right? And as leaders, I mean, it's painful to say to people who are who want to lead so much this summer and are, but not in a fullest sense, right? There comes a time in your leadership where you have to say, my time is up, right? When you're 29, you can't be a Rosh Hashanah anymore. You just, is anyone 29? I don't think so. Okay. You could, but it feels weird, right? Higi Azman, to give other people an opportunity and also for you to move on to the next project, right? And here, that's what's kind of happening according to Midrash for Moshe. This moment represents his last effort to act in this way with the people. And Hashem kind of, you could say, kindly closes it and says, Lo taviu. Okay. And Aaron dies in the next parak. Moshe lingers on a little bit more to help them out, to make sure that they're going to be okay. But this is the end of the parak. All right. I want to offer another approach. And it dovetails with what Ellie said and what some other people said about Moshe's relationship and Moshe's job. The hour is late, so I'm not going to teach you the Midrash. Is that okay? Or you want me to teach you the Midrash? I don't know. I see some yawns. So I'm going to summarize it, and then you can always look at it later, okay? Here's the second approach. The second approach is to say that actually what happens in this story is deliberately invoking all the other stories, like Sophia noticed. It's deliberately invoking all the stories of complaining and the stories of Moshe not knowing what to do, conversing with God over it, resolving it. What's different about the story is the Shimuna Hamorim. What's different about the story is that instead of, okay, and here's the image, right? I was gonna screen share so I could draw, but you can just imagine a triangle. Bnei Yisrael, Hashem, Moshe. That's confusing, right? Because we would normally put Hashem up here, but what's been happening since Matan Torah, I think that's the original moment of this triangle. What's been happening since Matan Torah, and I'm thinking specifically of the way in which it's retold in Dvarim. Remember with me, when Bnei Yisrael start to hear Dibur Hashem, and they say, it's too much for us, we're going to die. Moshe, please. Moshe, please, come in. Moshe, please, be the one, be the conduit for us. Could you please hear and absorb Dibur Hashem and help us hear it? Moshe, I would say, I'm adding this adverb, but reluctantly steps in. And from that moment on, he is navigating this triangle, which allows Bnei Israel to be in relationship with Hashem, and frankly, allows Hashem to be in relationship with Bnei Israel. That's Moshe's job, his whole life. I called it the tightrope because it's like impossible. And we keep seeing all these flashpoints, right? How many times? And here's the list that I was going to look at with you, but you could just listen, right? We talked about Chet HaEgel. We talked about the Meraglim. We talked about Korach, even when it got personal. On every one of those episodes, bless you, every one of those episodes, Moshe is operating as the one who allows, when Hashem is angry, he says, okay, guys, hold on a second. He talks to Hashem and he says, no, don't destroy them. Don't take me out of that triangle and let me just be in relationship with you. Let's try this again. Okay? I'm going to try to help you come back and be in relationship with Hashem. When the people get angry, he absorbs it. And then he figures out how to solve it so they don't run away from Hashem. You totally get what I'm saying. This happens again and again and again. And he does it, I would say, with exquisite ability that seems to be impossible to imagine how many times he can do that. They never seem to get it. Neither party, okay? That's like very blasphemous for me to say. But neither party figures out on their own how to be in this relationship without Moshe in the middle, right? And the one demonstration I said to you, we'd talk about the other rock water story in Amalek. It's like gorgeous if you think about this. Aviva Zorenberg writes about the story of Mechamet Amalek, how Moshe, remember you learned that in high school, like his hands were up, right? And when they saw his hands, they were able to fight. What is that about, right? By the way, that's the hand, not the rock. Okay, but when the hands were up, they were able to fight because, remember, Videi Moshe Emunim. When Moshe was in that role that he enabled them to build their own emunah through him. When he was up, they were up. When he was davening, they were davening. He was in this mimetic posture with them, where he was teaching them and holding Bnei Israel all the time. He could never leave. It was never like that babysitter, bye. Be back tomorrow. No, it was like constant, and the people were not able to build themselves up without him. And then what happens here? Okay, what happens in this story is he loses that capacity to live an exquisite negotiation between the two parties. Did you notice in the story? Hashem's not mad. Hashem's not angry. Hashem actually says to Moshe, okay, listen, here's the plan. Kachata mateh, and get them some water. There is no conversation between them about Hashem vayicharaf, or I can't take this anymore, I'm going to destroy them. Moshe at this moment, I mean, this is like a hard thing to say, but it's like he feels the anger for Hashem. He fuses himself with Hashem in a way, it's like what you said, Ellie, like by cutting him out, right, or by making it about him and Aharon, right? He's a fusing of him with the divine role. And that's where Hashem says, this ain't gonna work anymore. You can't, you're maxed out. Not in a sense of like you messed up, but I'm almost hearing it as like you're used up. Like I hear it almost in a sense of like with compassion. I know that's doesn't seem to go with the psukim either, but Yan lo ha'emantem bi, it's like you said, Ellie, you didn't make space anymore for you to act as the conduit, but you made it right about you and them, and this arrangement isn't working anymore. So lo taviu et hakahal hazeh, right? We're gonna thank you so much for your efforts. Let's add those words in, right? Like I owe you everything. We owe you everything. But lo taviu et hakahal hazeh. And then the story continues, I would say, out of kavod for that process that started to unfold here and is allowed to peter out slowly until he dies. So this story, just to recap, is either, I shall have it, either a story of Bnei Israel, like we said with approach 1, being at this new precipice, Moshe in a kind of natural way needing to exit the scene because of his role with Am Yisrael, with Dor Rishon, Hashem saying, okay, finish that up. or they're not really conflicting approaches now that I say it out loud, but the second approach is not so much about, well, just exit the scene because they're done, but he's exiting the scene because the negotiation between Hashem and Bnei Israel, which he has miraculously managed to hold in steady balance, all of these stories, he slips in this story, and slips in such a way, again, not as a sense of sin, but a sense of it's too much for you now, right? And so this episode makes clear to everybody that Moshe needs to go. Now it gets more complicated when you bring Dvarim in and how Moshe explains to us how he experienced it, right? Vat Chanan. Tfilat Chinam. It was extra and above, and I knew that it was not going to happen because really, if I think about it, I understand that it was over. But still. And I think even as readers, even if we accept these approaches, we're still left with the feeling of, but it's Moshe. But it's Moshe, right? And how many times did he just go above and beyond? You're still left with a lingering sense of unfairness. Silence is deafening, but then again, we're on Zoom. It was a pleasure to learn with you guys. And I really just want to say again, Hakarat Tov to all of you for what you're doing for kids and for teaching them that even when life is so weird, there are people who love you and care about you and show up for you in whatever ways they can. And your mom is succeeding. So thank you and good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much. That was
Thank you so
fantastic.
much.
Thank you, Dr. J, so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Good to see you.